Hello, everyone. Today we are going to discuss something a little bit more abstract, and that is the philosophy of the mind. You've probably heard of some famous philosophers such as Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates, but what exactly is philosophy? Philosophy is a Greek word that literally translates to love of knowledge. It is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. In a broad sense, philosophers ask questions about themselves, the world they live in, and their relationship to the world and with other people. They ask questions like, what is knowledge? What is considered good versus evil? And what makes us people? So you might be asking yourself, how exactly does philosophy relate to neuroscience? Well, there's a branch of philosophy that specifically studies the mind and its relationship to the body. This branch asks questions like, what are thoughts and thinking? How does the mind represent the world? And what is consciousness? As neuroscientists, we are not only interested in how the brain and the nervous system works, but we want to look at how the brain and the nervous system gives rise to our conscious experiences. Let's look at some of the debates within this branch of philosophy. Many of the early questions ask, how is the mind related to the brain? This has resulted in something known as the mind-body problem. This is a debate surrounding the relationship between the human mind and the physical body. After all, the mind is all about mental processes, thought, and consciousness, whereas the body is all about the physical aspects of the nervous system. There are three common theories surrounding this mind-body problem. The first of these theories is called dualism, which argues that the mind and the brain are completely separate. They see the mind as a different entity that is beyond the physical world of the brain. On the other hand, there is monism. This argues that the mind and the brain are the same. This believes that the mental processes of the mind can be identified with the purely physical processes of the brain. And somewhere in the middle, there is dual aspect theory. This says that the mind and brain are two different levels of explanation for the same substance. They are distinct entities but cannot be separated. All of these questions and debates give rise to something known as the hard problem of consciousness. Consciousness describes the awareness of your own existence, sensations, thoughts, and the surrounding world. The hard problem, though, is explaining why and how we are able to have these personal world experiences. For example, say you're going on a walk and suddenly you see a really cute dog. The sight of the dog will cause atoms to move around and neurons to fire in your brain. But how exactly does this activity give rise to our conscious and subjective experience of thinking that the dog is cute? Even though we can explain how neurons fire, how different parts of our brain are connected, and how our brain changes over time, we can still ask ourselves, why are we conscious? And so this idea of consciousness presents a hard problem for the scientific community. One thought experiment that is commonly brought up in this discussion of the hard problem of consciousness is that of the philosophical zombie. Now imagine that there is someone that seems exactly like a normal human. They look like a human and can physically process information just like a human, but they don't have a conscious experience. So then, how would you tell the difference between this philosophical zombie and a normal human being? Consciousness is inherently private. So, how do we know that the people around us are truly conscious? These philosophical zombies could be all around you right now, and you would never know. This thought experiment argues that there must be something about humans that goes beyond our physical bodies. Our conscious experiences need to be explained by something more than just the physical world. While there remain many questions and discussions about this relationship between the mind and the body, there are several neuroscience-related topics that can give insight into this idea of consciousness. Let's first take a look at split brain patients. In the brain, there are fibers that connect the left hemisphere to the right hemisphere. This allows the two hemispheres to communicate with each other. These fibers are called the corpus callosum. Split brain means that this corpus callosum is cut. This was originally used as a last resort procedure in treating severe epilepsy. With the corpus callosum cut, the left and right hemispheres are no longer able to communicate with one another. Now, let's see how cutting the corpus callosum would affect a person's conscious experience. First, take a look at the middle picture. If you show the word face to a person's right eye, it will be sent to your brain's left hemisphere. Your left hemisphere is dominant for processing words. Because you showed this word to the left hemisphere, a split brain patient would still be able to read the word perfectly fine. Now take a look at the right-hand picture. If you show the word face to the left eye, it would be sent to the brain's right hemisphere. However, your right hemisphere is not dominant for processing words, so a split brain patient would not be able to read the word. But, amazingly enough, if you ask them to draw a picture of the word that was shown to their brain, they are still able to draw a face. So even though this patient did not have a conscious experience of reading the word, they are still able to draw it. And if you take this a step further and show this drawing back to the left hemisphere, the patient would make up a reason as to why they drew the picture. You can see that the brain is making up a story in order to maintain coherence. So these split brain patients raise questions like, do we have two brains in our head? Can our consciousness be split into two? And how can we still experience things that we are unaware of? Let's now take a look at something known as alien hand syndrome. This is a phenomenon that happens when a person's hand acts on its own and is not consciously controlled by the mind. It's as if the hand has a mind of its own and can interact with the environment by itself. Alien hand syndrome has been linked to brain surgeries that cut the corpus callosum. Because of this, it is theorized that alien hand syndrome happens when different parts of the brain become disconnected. The parts of the brain that control your body's movements are now separate, and you can no longer consciously control these movements. So this raises questions about how unified the human conscience actually is. Lastly, let's take a look at a phenomenon called blind sight. People who are cortically blind have damage to their primary visual cortex in the brain. They are unable to consciously see the surrounding environment. Blind sight describes these people who cannot consciously see, but can still perform tasks that rely on vision. Let's go ahead and take a look at this video which exemplifies blind sight. The patient that you see in this video is blind, yet he is somehow still able to avoid the obstacles in the hallway and walk around them. Take a look for yourself. Amazing, right? For people with blind sight just like this patient, the information in their visual field never makes it to conscious awareness. But the information is still processed by other areas of the visual system that are still intact. This is what allowed the patient to be able to walk around the objects in the hallway. Blind sight is just an amazing example that shows how much happens in our brain that goes beyond our level of conscious awareness. So after watching this video, you might find that you have more questions than you do answers, and that is okay. Consciousness is a big area of research in psychology and neuroscience, and we are still trying to learn more today. While we are still looking for answers to this hard problem of consciousness, future research will hopefully allow us to have a clearer picture of consciousness and allow us to know more about this aspect of human nature.